Good morning, all. I'm Jennifer Eubank, live from the Sun and Moon YouTube yoga channel. Let me know if you're here. Good morning. We'll start in just a few minutes. I have a nice quiet practice planned for today. You may want to grab, in fact, please grab a blanket for today's practice. Good morning, Susan. Nice to see you. So as you come in, let me know. And as you get ready for your practice, go ahead and grab a blanket and fold it like this. And try to fold it nice and neatly and evenly as possible. Find balance in your blanket because we will be finding balance in our practice this morning. So we'll get started in just a few moments. Maybe take a couple of sips of water before you get started. Make sure your room is comfortable. If there's anything disturbing you in your setting, that can really affect your practice and your serenity, which is what we're trying to go for this morning. So fix those little things, those little annoying things. Okay. So it is now 10 o'clock. So I'll go ahead and get started in just a moment. Again, my name is Jennifer Eubank, and welcome to the Sun and Moon Yoga YouTube channel. We're here each weekday from 10 to 10:30, and I'm here on Fridays. I wasn't here for a couple of weeks. I missed you, and I'm glad to be back. And I had planned on continuing with my This is Spinal Talk series, but I changed course yesterday because I just decided that I needed to do something a little different because I myself am feeling a little overwhelmed, and I need a little bit more peace and quiet in my life these days. And I'm thinking I'm not alone in these sentiments. There's a lot of change in the air. The days are getting shorter, the nights are getting longer. The time, that's going to change even more. In a few weeks, it's going to get more so. Kids are going back to school, and it's getting cooler. So much changes in the air. And for me, change creates a sense of anxiety. And anxiety wears me out. It really zaps my energy. So today's practice is designed to give you a sense of restoration, and it'll be a quiet, regenerative type practice. And with that being said, I'll move back in my mat space in just a moment. But like I said, grab a blanket and fold it nice and neatly. And come onto the floor, onto your belly, and put the blanket right here. And the blanket is going to be there for your chest as you lie down on your belly. So take your time lying down on your belly. And that blanket should be right under your chest. And then stack your fists, one on top of the other. Elbows are bent. Pet your cat. Okay, yeah. And then bring your feet about hip width distance apart. And then place your forehead on top of your fists, like so. So your fists are stacked, your chest is on this blanket, your elbows are bent, and your legs are long and straightish, and maybe it's hard for you to get the tops of the feet on the floor, maybe you have your toes on the top of the floor. That's okay. Maybe eventually you can start to settle that down. That comes with time and practice. It can be really hard to have those feet right there on the floor like that. So whatever works for you. And I'm going to come up so that you can hear me every now and then. So you stay in this position. It's called supported crocodile. I believe that we have done crocodile pose before, and we usually just have our hands stacked. But because we have this blanket under our chest, that brings height to your chest, and so you need a little bit more height with those hands. So that's why we use fists. And close your eyes and settle into a sense of quiet, dark space here. Crocodile pose. So think about the qualities of a crocodile. Quiet, hidden, yet still aware of its surroundings. So you're not checking out, you're kind of checking in. And as you lie in this position, and as you settle into the stability of this position, take note of the stable points. Notice that you're even for the most part. And if you're not, see if you can find evenness. Notice if your feet are doing the same thing, and if your elbows are doing the same thing, and your shoulders, and your hips. Find a sense of evenness and equanimity. 50-50. You've got things on the left happening on the right, and vice versa. And it's not going to be perfect because everybody's body is not perfect. Everybody's body is a little different from side to side. So knowing that, you can be more accepting of any irregularities, but knowing that we are trying to find a sense of balance, are there little shifts that you can make to find a little bit more balance in the structure of your body? And as you find balance in the structure of your body, once you're settled and you know everything feels safe and secure and quiet, then take your mind to the energy within the body and see if you can find a sense of balance in your breath. So yogic breath, we're breathing in and out through the nose to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system, which is already bringing a sense of quiet and peace and serenity. See if you might balance out the inhale and the exhale, and those effects might even be more profound. And as you find balance between the inhale and the exhale, maybe you can start to draw each out and make for longer inhales and longer exhales that are still balanced. And as you find the sense of balance in the physique of the body, and the stance of the body, and as you find this balance within the energy of the body, notice what goes on in your more subtle energetic areas, your thoughts and your emotions. And perhaps you're starting to feel a little bit more settled and quiet. being on our bellies allows us to ground and root into the earth. And that's why I started on our bellies today, because there's a real sense of peace that one can gain from this weight on the belly. And I think that's because you start to spread out and you bring all this space in your belly, and then your digestive system, your elimination system, your reproductive system, all these systems that are nestled in the belly have a little bit more room and breath and area to work. And that's very soothing and settling. So this is very good if you have any kind of digestion issues to do this pose. And with that being said, let's start to make our way out of it. So take a couple more breaths. Notice what's going on in your pose. And then as you're ready, let's start to lift up just enough to take the head off the hands and slide that blanket out. And don't let it go far, because we'll need it again. And we'll turn this pose into Sphinx pose, which is not a huge transition. Maybe bring your legs a little bit closer in. Maybe they're right next to each other. And we'll talk about the legs a little bit more in a moment. But for now, if bringing them in makes it a little bit easier, do that. And we have our forearms on the floor. And I've got my fingers spread nice and wide, giving my hands and my wrists a nice platform and a nice base. And I'm still putting pressure on my belly. So I'm still nice and grounded. And even though I've lifted up, I'm even more grounded because my arms are so distinctly rooted into the floor. And as I lift up in this position, notice there's a slight back bend here. So this is a gentle back bend position. And back bends promote a broad chest and broad upper back, broad shoulders and collarbones. And with that allows more space for the lungs. And so the lungs can perform more readily. And back bends, as we expand our chest, we naturally take bigger breaths. Longer, bigger inhales and exhales. And with that comes energy. Now, my legs are strong, my bum is strong, I've got those muscles engaged to protect my lower back. So keep those legs nice and strong the whole time. And maybe you can bring the feet a little bit wider if you'd like. You can go for that. And if this is tough for you, you can always take your arms and scoot them forward. So the further away from your body the elbows are, the lower you're going to come down. And that can affect your back bend. So if you're up too high, change it. And if you'd like to go up a little bit higher, you can always change this Sphinx pose into a seal pose, which means you root into the floor. And before you do that, make sure the legs and the bum are really strong. You've got the support in the back to help that lower back as you pick up and increase that back bend. So I'm really engaging my glute muscles, I'm engaging my leg muscles. My legs are really strong and rooting into the floor, and my fingers are spread nice and wide, rooting into the floor with the hands. And I'm taking nice big inhales and nice big exhales. And I'm careful to keep my chin. I just caught myself looking up a little too much. I'm going to keep that chin as parallel to the floor as possible. Now I'm going to come back down to Sphinx. So I stayed in seal for about 10 or so breaths. Come back down. And another version, if you want to make it even less of a version, less emphatic. Again, you can bring those feet really wide, bring those arms up, and decrease that back bend and turn it more into a saddle pose. So Sphinx, the legs are together, and I'm up a little bit higher, but if that's too much, bring the feet wide, creep the feet and the arm, or the hands and the arms out a little bit more. And lying on your belly gives your lungs more room to work. So I just read recently that COVID patients they lie down on their belly for a good chunk of the day to allow more space for the lungs to function. So let's go about 5 more breaths. 5 more breaths in your pose. Things are still symmetrical, left same as the right and vice versa for the most part, in the arms, in the legs, in the hands, in the feet, in the shoulders, even the ears and the eyebrows. Can you find a sense of balance between those two sides? And what effect is this exploration having on you? And then when you're ready, let's start to slowly come back down. So just start to creep the hands forward and slowly but surely unroll back down into crack dog for a couple of breaths, but non-supported. So we bring those hands under the forehead, shake the hips a couple of times from side to side. Take a couple of breaths to notice what's going on in your body and in your breath and in your emotions and your thoughts. And then when you're ready, let's lift up. Draw the belly in, start to activate those legs and press up gently into a table pose. And let's spend just a few breaths in table pose and find a little bit of movement. So I'll give you about a minute to do some, perhaps you'd like to do some cats and cows. Maybe you want to do some crescents and turn and curve from side to side. Maybe you'd like to do a few hip circles. What movement do you want after all that stillness? Maybe you even want to do a child's pose and stretch out and do a few rocking horses. We've been doing these, shifting forward and back, making our way into a child's pose, which is also very quieting because we're facing the earth, we're grounding down, we're rooting, and we're getting a little bit of quiet time. And then whenever you're ready, come on back up and let's do a dolphin pose. Dolphin pose is a lot like dog. Dog pose, you're on your hands and your feet and you make that V shape and you try to bring the heels down to the floor. Sometimes that can be hard. Sometimes your dog might be more like this, but you want it more like this. And I thought I would introduce to you dolphin pose today. And it's a lot like that Sphinx. So we come down on our forearms, come to a Sphinx table. We call this a Sphinx table. On the forearms and curl your toes, and then when you're ready, straighten your legs, lift your hips up, and settle into your dolphin pose. And like dogs, if you want to come up on the toes and bring the heels down a few times, you can do that. You can walk your dolphin and bend one knee and the other. And see if you can find balance and symmetry. Are the elbows lined up? Are the hands lined up? Are the arms similar? And is the same thing going on in your bottom half, in the legs? And whenever you want, lower down and rest back in a child's pose. And spend whatever time in your first dolphin, and spend whatever time in your next child's pose. And then we'll spend the next few moments exploring our dolphins. So whenever you're ready, position and make sure that whatever you do with your hands, you put on the first two fingers, the inside of your hands, not the outside of your hands. And that can protect those wrists. And some people think this is easier than a dog. And in many ways it is, because you're a little bit more grounded and rooted. But also, if you've got some forearm issues, or maybe you've got elbow issues, this might be not so comfy. Or maybe it's just unusual and different and you need to get used to it. So make sure you really be honest with yourself and notice is it, I can't do it, or is it, I just got to get used to it. And feel free to come up into a dog if you'd rather come up into a dog. I picked dolphin because I'm trying to pick poses today to keep us close to the earth and rooted and grounded and facing the floor and facing the earth. And there's a lot of soothing qualities that come with that. And the balance in the physique of the body, and the balance in the breath of the body brings balance to the thoughts and the emotions. And all of these things can help dissipate and lessen any anxiety you might be feeling. And anytime you want to rest in a child's pose or a puppy pose, if you want to come up and do a little bit of shaking and shimmying your hips from side to side, anytime you want to come and hang out in a table pose, please do that. And then how about the next 10 breaths, we make our way back down. So if you want one more dolphin pose, she says as she springs up into her dolphin. I'm going to spend a couple more breaths finding symmetry to my body and notice what's going on with my Sphinx pose. Is it getting easier for me? It's harder for me to bring my heels down in Sphinx. I can bring my heels down in dog, but I can't in Sphinx. But that's okay because I can get a little bit more groundedness in my forearms. And that can help me push back instead of leaning forward. You want to be going towards the back of your mat in your dogs and your Sphinx, your dolphins. So let's all rest back in either puppy, which I'm in now, or child's, which I'm in now. Very similar. One is a little bit more grounding. Take a few breaths. And then when you're ready, let's inhale back up in the table and shake those hips from side to side. And then let's take our blanket again and put it right back where it was in the very beginning. And then we'll go right back to that second pose that we did, which is Sphinx. I had to think about it for a second. But we'll do a supported Sphinx. So we've got the blanket, and it's going to be there for our chest, or it is there for our chest. And you lie on your belly, and it actually might be a little bit more, it's not under my chest, it's under my top of my ribs. Let me clarify that. And then I put my forearms back down on the floor. And then for this version, I will bring my feet nice and wide. because I'm supported, which means I'm a little bit lower. I'm not up quite as high as my first Sphinx pose, much lower. This is more like saddle pose. Saddle pose is a yin style pose, very similar to Sphinx, but the back bend is not as extreme and our feet are as wide as the mat. And again, if you can, see if you can bring the tops of your feet on the floor. Maybe now it's a little bit easier. And if you got to move your feet about and your legs around to find that, do that. What do you need? And this blanket is there to support the upper portions of the belly and the lower portions of the ribs. And the forearms are there to protect the elbows and the shoulders. So as you root into the floor with the hands and the arms, see if you can let the shoulders relax and lengthen your neck and tuck your chin slightly in and see if you can find as much length between the shoulders, or as much space between the shoulders and the ears. So you don't want those shoulders hunched up in any of these poses. You want the shoulders nice and relaxed. And the more rooted the hands and arms are, the more you might be able to find that action of relaxing those shoulders. And that goes in the back as well. So the more rooted and grounded and active the legs are, the more you might be able to relax your shoulders. So spend this time to explore all the different connections in the body. And not just the obvious ones. Notice how your right pinky affects your left knee. For example, maybe you can find some other examples. And remember, the glute muscles and the leg muscles in the back, they should be slightly active, slightly engaged to help protect your lower back. So if you're feeling any strain in your lower back, ask the rest of the body to participate and give you the support that you need. Because if there's anything nagging you in these poses, that will interfere with the goal, which is serenity now. So if there's a pinching, how are you going to get that serenity? How are you going to get that peace and quiet? Slightly tuck the chin, look down at the ground, keep the shoulders relaxed, keep the knees soft, the eyes and the forehead soft, keep the breath quiet, find symmetry in your stance, and find symmetry and balance in your breath. And is that bringing balance and symmetry in the two halves of your personality? Because sometimes things are good, sometimes things are bad. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're sad. How can we balance those two out to bring a little bit more even-keeled behavior, thoughts, emotions? And then let's start to unwind from here. Start to creep the hands forward. And as the hands come forward, as do the elbows, then you uncurl the curve of your back. And eventually just let that head land, and then stack your hands back into fists. And stay in the supported crocodile. go ahead and lift up just enough to get rid of the blanket and land in a non-supported crocodile. And take your time as you land back in your non-supported crocodile. So the hands are stacked. Find symmetry in your body. Maybe shake your hips from side to side. Maybe pick up your feet and do a little bit of light windshield wipering to find symmetry and balance. Take your time. Couple more breaths here. Even out your inhales and even out your exhales as you pay attention to the two halves of the body. Even the stance as much as possible and even the energy. And then as you're ready, the next couple of breaths, let's press into the floor to gently lift the head up. And stay there for a couple of breaths. And then start to bring the hands under the body. And nice and quietly and gingerly start to come up into a table pose. Take several breaths to do this. And as you come back up into your table, take a couple of breaths in your table. And maybe bring your hips from side to side, shake it out. Take a few deep breaths, maybe do a few rocking horses. What do you want as you lift back up? And then as you're ready, let's have a seat. And either on a blanket or straight on the floor, on your mat, it doesn't matter. Take the time to organize a seat and to find stability and security. Really take that time. The more stable you are, the more easy it is for you to gain that serenity. Take a couple of breaths here. Close the eyes. And once again, find that balance between the two halves of your body, the right and the left and the right, the bottom and the top and the bottom, the front and the back and the front. Find all these ways to balance out the physique of your body. And notice the effects that that has on the energy, the breath. And as the breath settles in, settles down, the heartbeat settles, the emotions might start to settle. Just notice. There are no guarantees. Just see what your exploration has led to for you. What's happened in this experience for you. And then as you're ready, bring the two halves of the body together. Putting the hands in front of the chest like this brings the two halves of the brain into a more balanced mode of thinking. Serenity now. And thank you so much for your practice today. Namaste. Now, if you'd like, I don't know about you, but that practice, I was very tired when I first started, but now I have lots of energy, and you might too. So perhaps you'd like to continue and do some more yoga, and I encourage that. But if you don't want to, you could just get on with your day, but see if you can carry the serenity for the rest of the day. And I will say this one other thing, the more you do yoga and the more you find peace on the mat, the more able you're, the easier it is for you to find that peace when you're off the mat. So if you're having some anxiety and some tough times, these are very challenging, difficult times. Try to do yoga each day, even if just for 5 or 10 minutes, and you might find a sense of quiet and peace. Okay, so thank you so very much, and I hope to see you next week, next Friday from 10 to 10:30. I'm Jennifer Eubank. Check out my website. It's under construction, jennifereubank.com. And also check out our Zoom classes at Sun and Moon. We've just started our fall session, and we have many classes and many workshops to offer. So I hope to see you in the Zoom rooms at Sun and Moon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, Greg and Frank. Good to see you, Frank. Good to see you, Greg. Good to see you, Betsy. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming each week. We really appreciate your support. Hope you have a great day, everyone.